Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the franchise industry to give you actionable insights that can help you build a responsible, growing, thriving franchise brand. And I've got with me a friend of mine, Joe Matthews. And if you don't know Joe, I'm going to brag on him for a minute. I'll give him a chance to tell you something about himself too. But Joe's, he's the founder and CEO of Franchise Performance Group, FPG. And they do kind of end-to-end consulting, franchise development, help brands to figure out how to grow properly and well. But he's got over 40 years of experience. Personally, he's closed over 1,000. He's helped 1,000 people sign franchise agreements.
Right.
Let's say it that way. And then helped people using his systems. His clients have closed over 4,000 deals.
Correct.
Franchise agreements. So knows his stuff. You might know him from Street Smart Franchising. He's got a book coming out in Q4 of this year, The Ultimate Guide to Responsible Franchising. Did I get the title?
Right, by Wiley. Yeah.
By Wiley, which is a great publisher, by the way. And so congrats on that.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And then there are two things that he's passionate about in life. And Joe, why don't you tell us about those? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm a big dumb animal, Dave. Entrepreneurship kind of consumes a lot of my thinking. And the last 2 years, pickleball. Yeah. So I never thought I would compete in a sport again. So I'm an advanced pickleball player, but I'm, between my two passions, entrepreneurship and pickleball, I'm really only good enough to get paid in one. So pickleball is still the hobby. Yeah.
I was just going to ask which one it was, just to make sure.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
You saw me play, you would know.
Yeah. Actually, here's a crazy thing, and then we'll jump into the topic. So in the 90s, I played pickleball in high school. Like that was part of our PE curriculum.
Wow.
It's not a new sport, but it's
kind of like Pacific Northwest, and Utah happens to be one of the biggest hotbeds of pickleball in the United States. As a matter of fact, there's a big franchisor based there called Pickler, who has the mover shaker position of indoor facilities and franchising.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Weird irony though. I grew up in central Illinois, middle of nowhere. And then
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I know. We had the paddles, and I was the champ. My senior year, I was the school champion, which was pretty
nice.
But I need to get into it again. I'm doing some rehab on my lower back so I can be strong enough to.
We all have bad backs. If you ever look at a sign that tells you, warehouse that tells you how not to pick up a box or you're going to get hurt, that's perfect pickleball form. So we all walk around like my grandfather did about 2 weeks before we cremated him.
Yeah, but I'm going to play. So
not to be insensitive, my grandfather, he would have thought that was funny. Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Right. I knew where you're coming from. Joe, let's talk about the topic today. So
yes.
So a lot of things are changing in the franchise industry, guys, and a lot of people aren't keeping up. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring Joe on is he's not afraid to just say it how it is. And he's observed it for 40 years. So he sees a lot of things coming other people don't notice. So Joe, we're going to talk about the franchise salesperson of the future and what do they need to know today so that they can be effective tomorrow. What are some of the things that you're seeing changing in the role of a franchise sales professional today? Yeah,
well, you'd be surprised. No, I have an opinion on that. Yes.
Shocker.
For me, the franchise salesperson of the future should have been the franchise salesperson 5 years ago. So we're laggards, I think, in franchise development. Now, kind of what am I saying that? It's kind of how I had to evolve my company. We're an outsourced FranDev solution. So we do everything from lead generation to signing agreements and everything in between. So we've had to evolve, but I haven't found that the average franchisee recruiter has evolved as the buyer journey has evolved. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it purely from the buyer journey, and let's face it, every recruiter is responsible for getting agreements signed, right?
Right.
But they abdicate a big part of the buyer journey to vendors or other people within their own company. So specifically, let's look at the buyer journey, right? So somebody comes up with the idea, maybe I want to own a business someday or a particular vertical or particular even concept. So there's the online self-directed research, and there's a lot of visits to the website. We tracked that a buyer will spend 3.5 hours on FPG sites before they buy.
Wow.
And half of that time and half of those visits, that's about 18 or 20 visits. So 8 to 10 visits before they sign the form, and then 8 to 10 visits afterwards. So if you think about that, right? Leads will opt in really early, but they don't buy. So who cares, right? So the real buyers, people have unquenchable thirst for the type of information a buyer wants to read, and they're not engaging right away, right? So if you look at the franchise development person, then they're typically engaging the lead at the point the lead fills out a form or thereabouts, right?
Yeah.
But that's could be less than 50% of the whole buyer journey. Fast forward, like when I started, you put an ad and then you call them, and it was the buyer journey was advertisement to phone. Well, now it's not.
Yeah.
There's an incredible amount of content streaming that goes on. And because the average franchise salesperson has not kept up and don't know all it takes even to create an engaged lead, they're abdicating 30 to 50% of the buyer journey to other people who've never worked the lead before.
Yeah.
And that's the dysfunction of it, right? So they have all the responsibilities of getting deals closed and no authority over 50% of the buyer journey.
Yeah,
So think about it. Now, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but let's talk about FranDev. Like, what is it? It's generating traffic. So that's the digital marketing component. A lot of FranDev guys have kept up with other ways of generating traffic and leads, like through the broker groups, but they don't know diddly about digital marketing or social streams. Right. So generating traffic, moving the traffic to the website. They don't know how to tell a brand story with words, right? The written word or images or video. So they haven't really kept up on things like brand storytelling, which is a mission critical piece. I'll tell you, the websites we design. Now, why, we outperform the market by 200, 300% on conversions. Why? Because I'm not a traditional digital agency. We actually work leads for a living, right? Yeah. We know what the brand story is. We can anticipate the objections. We know what the value proposition of the business is. We know they don't want to be pitched. We don't say things like, sink your teeth into this mouth-watering opportunity, or my favorite, own a t-shirt business that will fit you like a tee. Like, that's not even credible, right? If somebody's looking to put up 300 to 500,000 or $1 million for a business, you don't need to do that. You make an expository business case about what makes this business unique, profitable, sustainable for the long haul, defensible against competition, right? And a wise place to put time, money, and energy for the right person. And who is the right person? So if the FranDev guys don't know how to tell that story, then what they're doing is they're abdicating to the content creators, right? Who've never worked a lead in their life, who are inclined to use consumer storytelling, and so they pitch, and with the same language and writer's voice that they would use to sell a pizza or a smoothie or a bicycle. They're trying to tell an investor story, and it doesn't work, and it actually becomes buffoonish. So by the time the FranDev guy gets a lead, there already might be 2 or 3 different misses, because the digital team doesn't know how to genuinely kind of tell a brand story. The content teams and the content streams might be a miss and don't really adequately tell the investor story or speak the language of the investor. So by the time the FranDev guy gets a lead, all those misses can be destroying their pipeline. Now, it's like our team, what we're doing, we cross-train. So our recruiters work with our digital team and actually help them with ad creation and ad placement. Our team, makes sure that we know where the leads are coming from. We could source it back not only to the vehicle, but to the ad that created the deal. As opposed to impression showing. How many ads go out there? Who cares? What's the ad that created the deal, right? Or the ad that created the application, or the ad that created the discovery day, right? What's the vehicle? That's the actionable data, that the development guys don't even get to the marketing guys, right? So it's easy to manipulate lead flow. It's hard to manipulate deal flow. So you can actually bring lead flow down and deal flow up if you do it right. Right. So let's put a bow on. I'll just put a bow on it, Dave.
Please, tie a bow on it. Let's break it down.
So tie a bow on it. The recruiter of the future is going to know enough about digital marketing so they could feed the ad agency actionable information that the ad agency can't create on their own. They know enough about brand storytelling to actually get content to the content teams to create streams that will actually influence the buy decision. Okay, and then actually and then learn how to work a process where they're injecting themselves in at the 50-yard line maybe and work it all the way through, as opposed to coming in on the 1-yard line and marching it 99 yards down the field like we used to.
No, thank you, because you've kind of laid the foundation, I think, for the entire discussion today. Like that's a great outline. And when you were talking, there's a moment where I wanted to chime in about Google. Like what is it, 10 years ago, Google's Zero Moment of Truth, kind of the white paper came out where they started saying, hey guys, we've got to change the way, it might even be 15 years ago now. We got to change the way we market because consumers they're trying to get more savvy before they convert, right? Remember all the gated content crap people used to do?
Yeah, that's right.
You want to learn about our brand? Fill out this form and you can learn about our brand to see if it's a fit. That's backwards, right? Like, no,
that's right.
Learn about my brand and then fill out a form if you give a crap afterward. Otherwise, why are we talking to each other, right? But Google published a ZMOT, the Zero Moment of Truth, and you're describing it perfectly, which is you've got like the consumer journey is so much more in the marketing funnel now than it used to be. And if your marketing funnel sucks, it has holes everywhere, the storytelling, the brand story is not right. I'm summarizing what you said, but I want
Google wants two things: new and relevant content.
Right.
They want the most reliable answer to whatever question is being posed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're designing content. I don't do it for SEO. I don't try to trick the SEO with, you write good, reliable, transparent, trustable content, and you have faith, right, that it's going to work its way up to the SEO chain. Like if you were to Google franchise lead generation, I always have 2 to if not 3 spots in the top 10 on Google. Same thing with outsourced franchise sales. Same thing with all our categories. Why? Because I publish a lot, but I don't publish for SEO position. I publish to educate the market on things they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it translates into strong SEO position, which is quite frankly where we get all our clients.
Yeah, as opposed to we've talked about this in another episode, but using AI and tools to mass generate SEO optimized content that reads like a 7th grader with dyslexia wrote it. Google understands that, and they're delisting all that stuff now. So like, I just want to reiterate what Joe's saying is so important. When we start talking about just like digital copy and digital strategy when it comes to franchise development or anything else, it's about quality over quantity now.
And I do think AI has its place in writing. I'll tell you, I use AI.
Yeah,
same. But it took my writing in an article down from 3 to 4 hours to write relevant content to under an hour.
Yep.
But I don't rely on AI. I use AI to generate ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then that stimulates me, and I put it in my own voice and do a very aggressive edits. You'd never recognize that the process would start with AI.
Yeah.
But recruiters using AI and not afraid, to put things in their own voice and do aggressive edits is a great way. Because sometimes the writing part, the hard part is getting started. The easy part might be aggressive editing and adding, meat to the bones. The hard part is creating the bones, right?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like this. Yeah. And I don't do a whole lot of copy, just some social things and some other content that I'm working on the side. But like that's how our team uses it. Layered AI, multiple tiers of here's the content prompt. Now here's the expert resource in the prompt. And then they just walk through these 3 or 4 different prompts separately. And then they have humans edit the content. So like it's AI's got a great place in it, but it's if you're taking a single strain of AI and then throwing it on your website,
if you go AI to website, that's useless.
Oh yeah.
What's interesting, we just subscribed to an AI video service, and I've been doing category videos. So like what's the benefits of starting a pizzeria? And they come up with a whole bunch of diatribe. But I can edit it down and I can change the video clips, the B-roll. And then the AI program does brilliant editing. I mean, just brilliant editing and pretty decent video selection out of limitless amount of B-roll they seem to have. So it's not brand specific, but it's category specific. I would use as lead nurturing content, and then I can control the script.
That's
I change the script. It changes the video to match my script.
yeah.
So that's extremely helpful because video can be terribly, terribly expensive, but it's impactful.
100%. Yeah, we use it all the time. Do you mind sharing what service that is? Or is that
I use InVideo AI.
okay?
So InVideo is the name of the company, and then they have a studio, which is video editing, and then the AI, which is separate and distinct.
Cool. No, that's rad. We have a couple other services we use, and we build a lot of our own just self-generated content.
Yes.
That's still, when we talk about content generation, having somebody talk authentically into a camera, even if it's long arm, like people like that content because it's authentic, even more than the hyper polished content, right?
And you can do some fun stuff. Like I got John Attleborough talking about why you should consider starting a mobile auto repair service business. Where else but AI can you do it? It's fun. Yeah.
That's rad. Wait, back on
John Attleborough, the nature guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So tell me, we're talking about content. This is still like super on point.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you said that I think a lot of people will hear and then say, well, I don't know about that, Joe, because a lot of people don't want to change and catch up, but is that a good franchise development professional needs to have a strong understanding and a willingness to contribute to the content side of the franchise development. Most people, or a lot of our CMOs out there, are going to say, well, hold on, Joe, like that's our spot. Like our marketing team owns that, so you sales guys stay out of it.
Yeah.
How do you bridge that gap so that
sometimes you don't?
Yeah.
I hate to say it. That's like, you're talking about a guy that has zero patience for siloing with 100% of eye on the goal. So my personal tactics, I probably wouldn't endorse in the marketplace, but I call people out, right? So because I got no patience for that. Like this is my grade, it's yours. Who cares? We got to do development, incorporate my feedback. Collaborative solutions are always the best, right? So there's so much data to support that assertion that collaborative solutions are better than individual solutions. So you should collaborate. Now, if somebody's not being collaborative, okay, that for me, I'm not interested in catering to people's, insecurities, so I don't really have a whole lot of patience for that. So I call them out and insist that our ideas be incorporated into the plan because they've never worked. The ones I'm talking about, that to silo in marketing have never worked the lead. And I will tell you flat out, consumer tactics do not work in franchise development. I mean, little personal story, I'm going to be 61 in a couple of weeks. Ask me if I ever in my life ever wanted to be, as a personal goal, Google certified, Meta certified, and know anything I want about digital marketing. I had to take that stuff on. I even had to take on being a writer. I didn't want to be a writer. That wasn't my goal. Now I have like 6 books and 100 articles, but that's what the job demands. So you adapt, right? So if you're not adapting with the buyer journey, you're willingly and willfully making yourself obsolete. And then worse than that, you're handing your role over to people who've never worked a lead before, and then you become 100% responsible for whatever work product they put out. Because at the end of the day, the recruiter is responsible for getting a deal done. And the worst position, I would tell you, as a consultant, we live here, right? But the worst position you could ever put yourself in, is having 100% responsibility and not 100% authority.
Yeah.
So if you got 50% authority and 100% responsibility, I'm going to submit. That's dysfunctional.
Yeah, and
horrible to be in. Dangerous. I live there. I've learned to breathe that air. As a consultant, I got 100% responsibility and often zero authority, right? I only have influence, but I just learned to navigate those waters. But I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and nobody other than my idiocy, for some reason, should ever willingly put themselves in that position because of willful ignorance.
Right. Yeah. But I'm sure, I mean, you as a consultant, there are other people that listen in that are consultants. I mean, you have 100% responsibility to close to hit a number, sign a certain number of agreements, 0% responsibility for the content development. How do you operate in that space? Like,
Well, I usually will only take a gig on if I've got authority and responsibility now.
Okay.
Yeah, they all have sign off power, right? But why hire somebody like me if you're going to override the experience level? We're not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I would encourage the recruiters to start taking classes. So there's good classes on HubSpot they take for free. Google's got pretty decent content on themselves.
Mm.
There's videos on Meta. We just posted a whole series of videos just to take one for the team. We took our playbooks for Meta and Google, and we will keep doing this website design. We're doing 20 modules of everything we think the recruiter of the future needs to know. And we've been putting that online. So we're on, I think we're ready to upload module 6 going into module 7. So if somebody goes to Franchise Performance Group and goes to our website under Franchisor Resources, they're going to see the FPG Sales Academy. Wow. And Google's on there, Meta's on there, broker relationships is on there, the buyer journey's on there. So you can start maybe following our content and that would be helpful.
I'm going to go check it out. So Franchise Performance Group, and they go to franchisor
franchiseperformancegroup.com, and then there's a tab for franchisor resources.
That's awesome.
It's the sub nav would be Franchise Sales Academy.
Promise that we didn't plan this, guys, but we rolled out 2 weeks ago. Franchise, we call it the Franchise Success Hub. So we're not the same content at all, but like from our world, we just see there's a huge need, Joe, for people to understand what's changing. And you've been in industry for 40 years, so you have this great deep perspective of what's happening and what has happened and what's not working, what has worked. I just come at it from 6 years, but coming from all these different industries where I've done consulting and saying, like this is.
Feel free to use our content any way you. I mean, we're just donating that to the world. Yeah. So feel free to use anything you think is valuable for your subscribers.
No, trust me, I'm going to go check it out today. I love it. So, but back on track. So one thing I want to bring up, you mentioned brokers. How is that landscape changing for someone who's trying to become a little bit more of a modern franchise seller and wants to find better success? Like, how are you seeing strategies needing to shift with broker communities? What's different there?
I don't know if the strategies for broker community has shifted much. Mm-hmm. I'm working broker leads the same way we've always worked broker leads. I was the COO of the Entrepreneur Source 22 years ago when it was just us and FranDev. So there was no other broker groups, right? So I've spent a big part of my career inventing broker networks as well as working with broker network leads, and it's kind of the same. It's like the franchisor has to build their brand within the franchise community. The franchise sales guy's got to build his own personal brand because they're sending leads to people as much as they're sending it to the brand. They want to know that you can get a deal done. Right. And then they want to know what your process is. They want how your validation is. So I would say the good brokers have gotten more sophisticated and how to vet a deal. So it's hard to get on their short list. So while there's all the players, all the brands that want to get into work with brokers, well, that's great. That doesn't mean you're going to get deal flow because the typical broker's going to work with 5 or 10 brands at any point in time. Out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Mm-hmm. So if you can't break into the short list, then you'll get a rogue deal and you'll get rogue interest in your brand. But you've got to build the relationships with the franchise brokers, and the shortest way to do that would be hire people that already have those relationships.
That's smart. That's a smart approach. Yeah, love it. Thanks, man. So let's talk a little bit more about brand story. So we've talked about content, and this is obviously a core integrated part of like digital marketing, social, etc. But not having a cohesive brand story means what might be happening is leads are interacting with the marketing content that's being written over here by a different group, and then they're coming into the sales process, and then the brand story shifts. That's an uncomfortable process for a consumer, right, Joe? Like to have them It's almost like jumping into a cold bath of water after a hot shower. You're like, whoa, what just happened? Like,
That isn't even the worst part, Dave,
what's
because
the worst
you
part?
can always clean it up because you're talking to them, right?
Right.
It's having the content that's not compelling, and then they're not converting, and they're going to other sites that answer their question. That's the problem.
No.
And not having a compelling brand story, right? Or not even knowing how to tell a brand story, or I'll give you kind of a quick example. We know buyers have voracious appetites for information, but a lead will power skim and fill out a form because they want downloadable content, but often they don't engage. And we know 80% of the leads come in through the phone, right?
Mhm.
So doesn't it make sense to design a website with a mobile first design strategy? If 80%, okay, and then and get the leads engaged, except that it's a fail. Like we did it for about a year. They want the content. So we went back to over a year ago, a mobile responsive strategy, but we're designing for the desktop, and we're heavy content, heavy graphics, 20, 30 page websites, right? A deep dive, 300 to maybe words on a page or more. And our websites convert at minimum of 2% to as high as 5%.
Mhm.
Most franchisors with the mobile first strategy are converting 1 to 1.5%. Now I would tell you landing pages will convert higher, but then the leads are less engaged, so they don't get into the funnel.
Right.
So if all you're concerned about is conversion, do landing pages. If you want engaged marketing qualified buyers, okay, you've got to look at your website, because at the end of the day, it's the website. That's the best money you can spend, is having a great website, best in class website. You got to tell them it's like a business case study, right? Go back to college. What's the business case study look like? What makes this business unique? What makes it profitable? So like, what's the revenue model? What's the margins? What makes it defensible, right? So what's your brand position? What's the industry doing? What's your brand position within in the industry, and how you defending your position in the consumer marketplace? Yeah, how does it operate? Like, who am I hiring? Yeah, what's the day-to-day responsibilities of a franchisee? I like to see item 7 information. I like to see item 19 information. How much money can I make? Right. And you got to lay it out well. And even that, Dave, isn't good enough, because a website, if that's your brand story, they can still read it chapter 1, chapter 9, chapter 3, chapter 17, right? It's non-linear.
Mhm.
So what we do is we have downloadable content that's more privileged. So you don't get it unless you fill out a form. So that drives conversions up. But the content's excellent, right? So the content is in PDF form. So now it's linear, right? And it builds on the previous. So things they may have glossed over on the website or just weren't interested in, but are compelling parts of the brand story, they can easily better told in a PDF, in my opinion, than on a website, but best told in both.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
now there's 3 hours worth of content. It's right there. Yeah, plus blogs and news stories, et cetera, and so on.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen before you ever get a lead, before you ever earn the right to a conversation. See, we only call leads, Dave, people that fill out a form. We don't call the traffic leads, right?
No.
I think we need to start thinking a little differently.
Yeah.
So when we generate traffic, I have our team look at, that's a lead, right? And the website is a conversation.
Yeah.
So what are you going to tell them about your brand? And that's mission critical.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I love it. I mean, this is going back just to validate or substantiate what we talked about before, right? That if you're a franchise development professional, right, this is your career. If you want to be successful on going in that process, you've really got to understand this and the buyer journey, and then what are the triggers that need to be in place so that you can continue that buyer journey with your brand. You got to answer that. You mentioned this, but I want to go back to it. You mentioned critical questions. When I talk to people about sales follow-up, post conversion, right? Because that's where we do our thing. But you have to understand, what are the 5 most compelling questions that your clients have, And that needs to be infused into your content. It needs to be on the website too, so they get to the point where they want to have a conversation with you too.
Exactly. Or what are the most common misperceptions people are going to have about your business? That could be addressed too.
What needs to be addressed.
Like what would stop them from contacting you? Misperceptions, common objections. That gets baked into your brand story.
Yeah, because and you said this before, and I don't want to misquote you, but was it 2 to 3 hours of time on the website, or how many hours was it on?
Yeah, we measured leads would spend 20 minutes. I'm defining a lead as anybody who fill out the form and doesn't buy.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to discovery day, not buy, or they can not engage in the first conversation, anywhere in that continuum.
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes. A buyer, 3 to 3.5 hours, 18 to 20 visits. So buyers don't behave the same as leads. So and one of the challenges of why, marketing departments do, they look at the marketing funnel like, they're like this funnel, right? Here's where all leads are equal at the top, and then they move down until they eventually buy, and you get the funnel. Our marketing people are very different. We know there's leads and there's buyers, and they're not the same people. The same way there's NFL players and there's people in the stadium, right? And they are not the same people.
No.
Yeah, franchising and entrepreneurship has always been a spectator sport, so we want to look at it that way. Yeah. But we're not trying to target the spectators, which is the 75% of the people who every year report to these various polling agencies that they want to start a business someday. We're trying to target the 11% that actually do it.
Yeah.
Right? That don't have a dream or a wish to do it, but actually have an intention.
Yeah. And that's the harder part. It's weeding down to them. You can't just find them necessarily because it's hard to find the triggers. But if you have the right content that attracts them,
if you have the right content, they'll find you. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the finding them is the digital marketing piece, but you'll find them. Either they're looking for you on Google, or you can find them on the Meta platforms plus Google Display.
Yeah.
Or through broker networks, or to a lesser extent, I would say even the franchise portals.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Well, there's a flavor of this, and this is obviously with your book coming out in Q4, Joe. I'd love to wrap on this thought. This term responsible franchising is a buzzword now.
Yeah. And when you say rap, you're not expecting me to rhyme, are you?
If you can, that would be amazing.
I cannot.
I can lay a track for you. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how would you define responsible franchising in the context of franchise development? This is an area I think that gets overlooked a little bit. How would you define that, Joe?
Yeah. So first of all, let's define responsible franchises. When I hear it being whipped around, I think responsible franchising would be interchangeable with ethical franchising. So let's use it in terms of business ethics. Okay. So from ethical recruiting for me would look like don't set people up to fail. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's for me is kind of horrifying, because I'm in the twilight of my career at 61, right? And I've been doing this 40 years. I have not seen, and I might even say today it's worse than it's ever been, the ethics in franchising as it relates to franchisee recruitment. Mm-hmm. So there's two approaches to franchising. One I'm going to call unethical, and the other I'm going to call more ethical or ethical. Mm-hmm. So there's a franchise sales. So that's the companies that see it as a sales role. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, we've mystery shopped probably 200 franchise salespeople in my career, and we do all these reports. We have never, not one time in 200 attempts, ever been effectively interviewed for a business. Not one time has anybody examined or got into transferable skills, relevant work experience, aptitudes. Not one time, and maybe I'll relate that back to the business. Wow. So we've gotten the typical, 5 to 7 pre-qualification questions, like how much money do you have, and what's your time frame for starting a business, and what other business have you looked at, and why did you say no, right? What are your hot buttons? All that. Well, those are self-serving franchisor questions, but not one time have they ever tried to match somebody to opportunity like they would if they were making a key management hire.
Yeah.
Not one time. The sales role where you're doing feature, benefit, close, seems to be all or mostly what franchisors are implementing and concerned about, which is deal flow, which has always been the case. Okay. Now, with private equity, I see more attention to what they call quality of earnings reports. In other words, how predictable are these royalty streams going to be into the future, which means are people succeeding, right? So, yeah, so there's more attention, I think, by the private equity firms paying to who's on board here and how well are they doing. But I'm not seeing that always make its way into the franchise sales processes. Like, so my guys are trained talent acquisition. So they take an HR executive recruitment approach. So we get really into a deep dive on who they are as a person, the objectives they're looking to hit, because if the business can't produce the objective with a high degree of probability, it shouldn't be looking at it because there's other choices in the marketplace. Their skills should align. Their weaknesses should not be exposed to any great extent, or at least there should be margins available in business to hire around it, right? It's got to have a good unit level economics and be resilient, right? At the end of the day, the business exists to meet the needs and supply the objectives of the ownership, right? And there should be a line of sight between the business and the objective and who that person is. And that's kind of like the holy trinity of entrepreneurship. And I see it as kind of this sacred trust that's consistently violated, and it irritates me. So that trust is, look, Dave, if I'm talking to you and you're a franchise candidate, I've accepted the responsibility of taking your goals and your capital on as my own, and making sure, okay, that capital is well employed, that time is well spent, and that business will produce the results with the highest degree of probability, or we should not be talking.
Yeah.
So I do see a violation of that sacred trust that franchising should be about. I don't see franchising as a legal contract. I see franchising as a social contract. And then if, on the flip side, if the franchise candidate does the business, they should be doing it consistent with the franchisor's values and learning the franchisor's platform to the best of their ability, rather than trying to change or tweak it or modify it to suit their personal needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I love that. Joe, I think that you've hit on a couple of mission critical things today. And
I talk a lot. Sorry.
No, this last part, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that I thought of as you were sharing, and I was taking some notes, and I appreciate it. It's hard to cram 40 years of experience and knowledge and insights into 35 minutes of content.
Well, I really only have 1 year. I've repeated 40 times, so it's a little easier.
Yeah, you can condense it down. But the private equity guys, you mentioned them. They've got a lot stronger interest in the quality of the candidate who's going to be able to be a producer of consistent revenue within the business model. And I thought, regardless if you have a plan to exit, you should be thinking in terms of, if you're not going to be responsibly selling franchises, as Joe was describing, which I totally agree with, by the way, for the reason that you want to be an ethical human, then you better darn well align with that same strategy, because the private equity groups are going to be looking at your business and they're going to rip it to shreds, guys. And they're going to be looking for the quality of your candidates and their ability to produce consistent revenue. So if you're not doing it for the right reason, that's between you and yourself, right? And the guy that looks in the mirror. But do it for the reason that if that is your end goal to have an exit, you still need to responsibly franchise, because that's going to produce a better multiple, a better successful franchise, and you're going to sleep at night.
Unless you can hide your mistakes, and that's the whole situational ethics, please, right?
Yeah.
I was hired by a private equity firm to evaluate an opportunity once, and I've looked at the cohort analysis of new franchisees. Every year they get better, 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 and then in year 8 it dipped, and that's the year they sold the most deals. And then I kind of went to their item 2, and I looked at the bench strength, and I was like, nobody here actually has any experience except the 3 VP level and C level people in the brand, and they're all exiting, so they're out. So what did they do? I told the potential buyer, I said, here's what it looks like they did. They lowered their standards. They pumped up the numbers. Now they're looking to dump before the operating problems hit hit the fan.
Man, yeah.
And the people that could actually fix it, if when it does hit the fan, are all exiting. So this thing's a ticking time bomb.
Uh-huh.
I actually met the seller one time at a broker, and I told him I looked at the book, and he asked me, how did you advise your client? I told my client took a pass. And I told him why, and he just gave me a smile. And he said, you advised your client well. So the other reason I'm telling you is, look, ethics comes into it, and it's situational ethics too. Like, if it's $1 million decision, do you take a risk? What if it's a 10 million? What if it's a 20 million? What if it's $100 million decision? What's your number where all of a sudden ethics goes out the window? So that's kind of what we need to answer for ourselves, right? So I don't see it as like you had said, it's personal. I don't see it as personal because it's other people's money, dreams, and hopes. So I see it as really intimately others focused.
Mhm.
And if it looks like a personal decision, I'm saying that's part of the ethics problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It should be completely others focused. I mean, there's brand protection, right? But you really should be keyed into who that person is and have a trusting relationship and get to know them and actually assess, whether or not they can be successful in this brand instead of assume everybody can be, because that's not true.
Right. No, you're spot on. You're spot in a dream world where the franchise model itself makes everyone superhuman. Sure, but it's not that way. It's not that way. Good operators and bad ones. We all know it. Joe, you rock. Thanks for dumping so many good insights. I took a lot of notes. We're going to be sharing this with everybody. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they say, man, Joe's onto something, I want to pick his brain about this?
Yeah, I think two ways. So one, just hit our website, which is franchiseperformancegroup.com. And that will tell you what we do, how we do it, what we stand for, et cetera, and so on. If you want to do a deep dive on FPG. Okay. And then if you just want to talk, if you can't tell I like to talk, you do now. My cell phone number is 860-309-1484. And as long as you're not pitching me something, feel free to pick up the phone and talk shop.
Love it. Joe, thanks for being accessible to everybody and for the work you're doing to try to level everybody up in the way that we do franchise development. And certainly appreciate all the time on the show. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, Dave. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, same. You too.